Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. Today, I'm back with another interview episode, and I'm bringing you Chef Aran. I'm very excited to have Aran on today. He is an amazing chef that cares so much about nutrition, quality of food, and I am so lucky that he is also the chef at my kids' school that they attend. I'm really looking forward to bringing you the conversation today. And I just also want to give him an extra little shout out. So the first time we recorded our interview, I forgot to hit the record button. I know it was awful. It was like one of those things that in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I think I forgot to hit record. But he was gracious enough to come back and re-record. So this is the second recording. Thank you, Aran. Before I get into the episode though, I do want to share an email from Prep Dish subscriber Amy. Amy writes, "Hello, I'm a monthly subscriber and I love this service. The food is great and I love having almost all of my cooking done on Sunday and knowing what we are going to eat all week. It has made such a difference in our family in terms of how healthy we eat and how much calmer our household is at dinner time." Amy, thank you so much for sharing. I love that your household is calmer at dinner time. I feel like that's one of the greatest things we can offer here at Prep Dish. I know it's recipes or it's like, what is it? But offering you a less hectic, calm dinner time. And then on top of that, healthy food. That's why we do what we do. So if you are listening to this and have not tried Prep Dish, we have a free trial set up. It's 2 weeks free. You can try out all the different meal plans we have, see if it's a fit for you, how it works in your family. That is at prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday. It's linked in the show notes or below in the description if you're watching on YouTube. But we have that 2-week free trial set up if you want to give us a chance. Okay, now on to the episode with Chef Aran. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to be here today with Chef Aran Goldstein. He's graciously come back a second time. As I mentioned in the intro, we forgot to hit record, but excited to have another opportunity to catch up today. Aran, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Allison.
Could you just give the listeners a little bit of background on you?
So, I've always loved food ever since I was a really little kid, but I didn't know how to go about becoming a chef. And that wasn't part of my path as a young kid. In high school, I wasn't exposed to restaurants or restaurant jobs or anything like that. So I went to a 4-year college and went to Northeastern studying sociology, but all along was just obsessed with food, obsessed with travel, obsessed with exploring life and the world through the act of cooking and through food. And so immediately after school, I enrolled in culinary school up in Vermont. And I'll never forget from day one, I felt like I was just coming home. I walked into the first kitchen, put on my whites for the first time, polished my shoes, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. And that was, I guess, winter 2005.
Okay.
And so we're going on almost 20 years of being in this industry. That has been a really interesting evolution for me, an exploration of my own life and my offering to this world. And I've noticed my career as it's gone on, especially when kids became part of the equation. I've just been more and more interested in health and well-being and how our food decisions impact our lives and the way we show up. And when kids became involved, it was just like the stakes just became so high.
The game changes.
And for me, that's where I'm at with the exploration now as a chef of schools and building real food school lunch programs. It's been this amazing ride and amazing test for my kind of where I'm at and what I'm offering to the world.
Great. Well, and let's back up a little too. So we met, our kids go to the same school. You were the chef last year at the school that my kids attend. And I know the listeners have heard me talk about this. I just feel so blessed and blown away that the kids get to eat the food that they do eat. So talk a little bit about your role at that school and where you are now and the kinds of food you're cooking for these kids. And how did that happen? How did you get to?
I didn't choose this path really. It was the second time that this has happened. Now it's the third time I'm on my third school that has approached me and asked, hey, can you come and cook for these kids? And each time it's because, the first time it was in the north of Italy. A friend of mine was starting this program on this biodynamic winery in Piemonte. And she called and I was just like, yeah, like let's do this. Let's move to Italy and let's do this, right? But I'm just doing me. I'm just, cooking my food. My food is just forever evolving, forever exploring. It's, from the whole globe. But what the foundation is ingredients that speak to me, like that have resonance. And for me, there's nothing more important than to share that with these kids and just kind of model a way of living that is really just returning to our past, right? There was only this food not that long ago. Maybe 100 years ago, right?
Yep.
So I just show up, I write menus that I'm excited to cook, that I'm excited to share with these kids, that of course are with the seasons and with the rhythms of the year and the calendar. Some of it is inspired by holidays, say corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day, things like that. But I just show up more than anything, kind of holding this like fire, this hearth, for these schools. Better said, they end up being that, even if it's unintentional. Just like a home kitchen can be, like it's like that place where you just want to congregate. It's that place where you get that nourishment. Your kids are coming home from school, and where do they go? Like they go to the kitchen, they go to the fridge, they go for a snack.
Well, and I wanted to say, I feel like at our school, you did create that. Like at the school we go to, we literally, like the dads on Tuesdays get together for coffee, but it's in the kitchen. And then the moms on Wednesdays in the kitchen. And it's this feeling of like home and connection. And it's literally happening in the kitchen. And, you created that. Before we get in deeper on that, I do want you to just kind of go through some of the meals that these kids are eating on a day-to-day basis. Give us an example of like a few days.
Just yesterday was one of my favorites. Going to India, basically, kind of South Asia. And so I did kind of like a chicken tikka masala, basmati rice with grass-fed ghee from Pure Indian Foods, which, by the way, Pure Indian Foods, if you don't know, their ghee is amazing. Their spice is amazing. I made a bangan bharta, which is that like smoky eggplant that I can't get enough of. Yep. And then just always on the end of the buffet, I've got fun garnishes and sauces. So like fresh chopped cilantro. The day before was another one that I love. Every Tuesday, we kind of have a Latin theme. Okay. Whether it be Taco Tuesday or kind of burrito bowl. Very often that'll be an overnight braise that I'll prep on Monday. I'll salt meat in advance. Sometimes I smoke it, but almost always I'll go overnight, low and slow at like 220 with either like a chuck roast or brisket or a pasture-raised pork shoulder. And then either do like some kind of like either potato or sarge or tacos or rice. And then just play. Always ferments, always sauces, always fun stuff, at the end of the buffet for them to play. Always crunchy things. Like tomorrow I'm going to make a jicama slaw with a smoked grass-fed brisket. Do kind of like Texas rancho beans or ranchero beans. I'm still learning the Texas cuisine. And so, each day is just it's just fun. I definitely focus on the main protein first. Always pasture-raised, grass-fed meats. And then just like play with the seasons in terms of like the produce. Like what's good coming from this place, farm to table that I order from. What's local, what's fun. And that's how the weeks kind of turn. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, and all that food. Sometimes I read the menus. I'm like, oh, I would love to have that today. And I know, so we have a lot of moms that are listening in right now, and they're probably thinking, well, do you get pushback from the kids or even the teachers? And how do you deal with that? And are there, this isn't chicken tenders. This isn't kid food. Are the kids eating this? Oh, yeah. They eat it. The first day at this new school, I'll never forget, I just did a really simple grass-fed flank steak. Okay. So just like flank steak, cucumber salad. It was day one. I'm just going to keep it super simple for these kids. Yeah. And they ran to the buffet for this steak, right? It was just like simple, like steak, very like keto kind of. It was arugula salad, cucumber, a few fun garnishes. Yep. And like actually boiled potatoes and these little Yukon Gold potatoes, just boiled and then tossed with olive oil and a lot of sea salt, right? And that's just an example of, I think when you show up with real food that smells good, that looks good, the kids respond to it. Yep. Right? Especially when it's just like that. That's a safe thing to do, right? Yesterday's chicken curry, that was some kids' surprisingly favorite meal that I've ever made for them. This was new for this school to like kind of push that envelope a little bit with something a little bit more exotic. And one girl, she's in 4th grade, she came up, that was my favorite meal that you've ever made. Yeah. Inevitably, that's some kids, least favorite meal. But I hold space for that kid, for all those kids every day.
Yeah.
And so they all know that if there's something that they didn't like, or maybe that whole buffet that just didn't speak to them that day, they can always come into the kitchen. I can always make them eggs. We can always go into the fridge. It's the same approach that I have at home.
Yeah.
It's okay that you didn't want that or feel like it. Maybe you were, feeling like something else, we can go and explore and see what else we can come up with. My son has an interesting way of describing, what he's feeling. And he says, like, I can't have something hot. I can't have something cold.
Interesting.
And then it's like, what am I going to do? Make him eat the soup that I made that night? Like, that doesn't feel right. Even though I don't know if that's the right call always,
I mean, welcome to parenthood.
But my approach is, I know. My approach is, I'm proud of all the food in the home. In the schools, I am proud of all the food in that kitchen. I will never bring anything into that kitchen at school or at home that I'm not really proud to share with my kids or feed my kids.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, if you don't want that thing, if maybe it's a bowl of yogurt with some like pomegranate seeds last night and a little raw honey.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what he wanted, right? That's my approach.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of what I'm hearing here is like, it's in the, I want to say presentation, but almost more in the attitude that you have. And they can sense that, right? You're not like, I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not presenting it being like, I don't think you're going to like this.
Oh, no way.
You're like, you have that confidence. And I think that's a huge thing for these kids. Like, they're going to pick up on that. And so if you're going to present it and be like, I don't think they're going to like it, they're going to pick up on that. So
100%. Yeah. And I've had interesting interactions in different schools where I've heard the teachers actually say certain things and then we just had to address it. Like, look, let's believe in this. Let's think positive. Let's not have assumptions.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. But I would like to turn the question around to you because you really had profound insight on this topic. And you have an approach that I think is unique, that I felt like there was like light bulbs going off in my own approach when you spoke about the kind of like zero pressure and zero expectation approach that you have.
Yeah. And we've talked about this, and I know you and I have talked about this kind of offline of like, it's really important to just like not have this pressure, not have a language around it. Kids pick up on so much. And I really have to make sure when I'm eating with my kids, I don't pay attention to what they're eating. They're making that choice. I choose what I present. And like you, I'm very like proud of that. But then from there, the rest is in their court. And if you're watching them, they're going to feel that. And no one wants to, if someone's watching me eat, I'm not going to want to have my dinner, like no one's going to want that. So it's like, I think a lot of times we have to really reflect on us and our attitudes, and especially our language. And, even if we're well-intentioned and trying to say, oh, this is yummy, like even something as simple as that, their radar will go off if you're trying to fake it. So I've learned it's just best, like, we can have a simple discussion about the food, but I try and focus on the connection at the meal, and then the food kind of follows. They'll follow suit. If you're eating, they'll eat,
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that is going to bleed into so many other aspects of their lives, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, I can imagine the repercussions of that pressure and like the people pleasing that must come from this, like just that one micro example of how a household could be for some kids, right?
Yeah.
Well, I better eat this to make mommy or daddy happy,
Yeah. And a school.
Yeah.
So, having that environment both at home and in the school setting is so huge in terms of just helping them to feel more calm and, in the right space, right? And even safe, right? Because they're not feeling this pressure.
Yeah. And I wonder, this is an approach that a lot of times I think about the things that we I don't want to say have to deal with, but we do things that we're faced with in 2024 that must not have existed 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like when we were just like a tribe and we were around the fire, and likely dad went out to hunt and mom was maybe like working on some things back by the fire. This didn't exist, right? Like there wasn't all of these outside forces and all these subtleties and decisions in terms of how we approach like getting the kids to eat certain things. Like I sometimes think back to those times and I'm like I almost feel nostalgic. It's like I wonder what that must have felt like.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'm asking myself, how can I bring more of that into this modern environment? That feels more fluid, feels more intuitive, right? In an environment it's hard to even know what we're intuiting and what is right?
Yeah, it's like we've created more decisions than we need to, right? Like it should be a lot simpler. And there's, like you said, all these outside forces, and it's like, oh, there's a million decisions, but actually maybe there's not. Like it's just like it can be simple, I think. So yeah. Well, I'd like to hear a little bit first, if you don't mind sharing the ages of your kids, and then how you approach, mealtime and meal planning in your household.
So my own kids? Yeah. So I've got a 7-year-old and an almost 2-year-old as we speak.
Yes.
And, it's interesting because I feel like every week and month is an evolution, especially with the young kid that is really, it's like starting to explore solid foods more and more.
Yeah.
And having gone through it twice now, this is like round 2, now I've learned so much from round 1, you know? But my approach is the same as school. It's like, I'm always going to my go-to stops for a lot of the same staples. So locally here in Austin, that place is Local Pastures that I'm just obsessed with. And that's a place that I know I can get all the pasture-raised meat and gas-grass-fed meat, best, most amazing eggs in the whole world, good quality dairy and yogurt and ferments and things like that. So I just I have a freezer full of meat that I'm just always pulling.
Yeah.
I also have built rituals that they're just seamless. Like every week we're making broth, and when we're getting low, I just make more, and pretty much all year long, summer, winter, we're always using broth. And so, I don't even menu plan really. That's never been my thing.
Yeah.
My wife thrives more with that. It's interesting. We're different with our approaches.
Yep.
But I will say the more she and I are on the same page and communicating needs, especially because her needs are very different than mine. And they're changing with the month, and the year. And she has hypothyroid, and so and she's trying to heal and taper off her medication. So she is in a place. I'm in a place.
Yep.
And so the more we communicate, the more we feel like there's flow. In a time where honestly, flow is very challenging with a 2-year-old, or an almost 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And the dynamic between the two kids. It's definitely it's an up and down time.
Yeah.
And I'm yearning for more kind of calm at that dinner table time. But I'm also surrendering to look, this is a temporary thing, right?
Yes.
And I'm one of 5. And I have to look back and I'm there was ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But that's a reminder to me to really hone in on, my culture, our culture, I should say, as a family, and never waver from, okay, no matter what, they're going to get a nourishing meal.
Yeah.
Right. And one of my approaches to, when I'm working with people and whenever I'm, even talking to these kids, especially the families and the parents of these kids, it's own that piece of it, own the culture.
Yeah.
But you really might as well get really good at cooking. Because the other stuff is messy and it's hard. It's hard being a parent in 2024, and to have the bandwidth to hold space for each other, right?
Yeah.
With the man-woman relating and husband-wives, and it's hard enough holding space for these kids.
Yeah.
And so I think that we can really look at the act of cooking and getting better at as something to celebrate.
Yeah.
To really just make our lives easier.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sometimes we will, if we eat out, and then especially I have one kid that especially I feel like his behavior changes, when we eat food that's not as clean as what we're eating at home. And I'm man, it really makes a big difference in the way our family interacts when we have that touch point of we sit down. Well, it's 5:00 right now because we have a 10-month-old that has to eat by 5:00.
Yeah.
But when we sit down at 5:00 every night for dinner, it just makes a big difference in how we are together as a family. When you're cooking, I'm curious, do you ever involve your kids, or is it mainly you, or how do you guys handle
who's totally. In the kitchen? I mean, again, that's also been something that is ever evolving.
Yep.
Early on, my older son and I had a really cool rhythm of just a lot of time together. And this was when we had moved from Italy actually to Portugal.
Okay.
And we just had a lot of that space, this was COVID times, and he showed interest. And he and I started filming videos. We filmed a cooking course together that's adorable and impactful for families. The whole point was just kind of create sparks in families' homes to integrate their kids more into these processes, which I think is a reclamation in a way of like a rite of passage that we once had, because kids must have been involved with these rhythms. They must have been around and learning from their parents, right?
Yeah. I mean, how else would they learn to do it themselves?
Yeah, right? Which is something that we're in danger of losing if we don't start to, pass these skills on, right? Or reclaim them ourselves first. So early on, I gave him a knife and just kind of let him have at it. And I guided him with that process. And interestingly, with our we moved to Austin, we kind of that kind of fell off. Maybe it's also an age thing. He just was very often playing while I was in the kitchen. But just more recently, he's just been kind of like popping in and saying, "Can I help?" And it's like, oh. Yeah. And then he pops in, and just the other day, actually, he wanted to peel carrots. And I had this moment where I just looked over. And he was just owning it, and he peeled all these carrots. And then I looked over, and my little guy was at his feet, and he wanted to pull up a stool and be with his big brother. Actually, I just shared a reel the other day because organic pomegranates just popped at Whole Foods, and they're like, "Oh my God, yes!" And that's one of the things that I taught Rafa how to do. We would split them open, and we would just like hammer at them with a big, heavy spoon. And I brought him the pomegranates. Rafa started popping. I'm like, "Can you go outside?" So we don't get juice everywhere. And he's on the deck. And then what happens? My little guy comes. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a moment where like, now my 7-year-old is just teaching my 2-year-old. And this is literally that reclamation of passing this on to our lineage. And it's like, oh my God, this is, I suppose, a reward in a way too, of just showing up and deciding to show up and committing to showing up in this way for my boys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I talk about this a lot of like, I feel like right now I'm investing in my kids. Like they're in the kitchen a lot. And I actually went through that too, where Ivan used to be very involved. And now he really wants to do it on his own time in his own way. Some nights he wants to make dinner all by himself, or he does his scrambled eggs by himself. Other days, not at all. Some days he wants to do the dishes. And that's, I'm trying to like 11 to have some independence, whereas 7 and now it's like very involved, but I'm sure, then it'll phase in and out. But it is like, it's so cool to see like that first morning when Ivan just woke up and was like, I'm going to make scrambled eggs. And I said, okay. And he did the whole thing from start to finish. And I'm like, wow, like, and I think that's an encouragement for parents, no matter what age your kids are, like it might go slow at first. And especially now at 7 and that knife, I'm just standing there and it's so slow. But I'm like, in a few years, and it doesn't take that long, and they really start to become an asset in the kitchen. And it's so cool to see. And I think for both of us, I can just tell it's like the biggest reward to see your kids in there, peeling the carrot or chopping or, and then they're going to eat it too, right? They're going to be so much more invested in it.
Yeah. So. They're much more likely to dive in and be interested. I look back, it gives me chills. I used to cook for my mom on her birthday. I don't know when I started doing this. And it's funny, it was eggs. But my mom loved poached eggs. And on her birthday, we had one of those little, breakfast in bed trays, that kind of sprays out. And I would make her poached eggs on whole wheat toast. And she loved with like a little bit more vinegar, like distilled white vinegar and lots of black pepper. And I remember just feeling just like so warm in that experience, offering that to my mom and making her feel loved and making her feel special, which must have been this like, thank you to her for her providing that for me. And, that stayed with me. And like, and maybe that was just inherent in me. Maybe this is my, this not is maybe like, this is my calling,
it's a calling.
But like, let's let our kids have that experience and let us learn from that and grow up ourselves or perhaps remember ourselves that we are here to just be and to play and to slow down. Right. Which is so hard. It's so hard for me to slow down because my pace can be so revved, especially with this job. But it's worth everything.
Yeah, no, it really is. Well, you mentioned your calling. I would like to hear a little bit. I know we were catching up before we hit record, but I'd like to hear a little bit about, I know, yes, you're, this amazing chef that's helping all these kids. And oh my gosh, like that is the best work ever. But you're also doing a lot of other things. Can you share some of the other projects you're working on right now?
Yeah. So, I've got this fire burning inside me to really just spread this message and kind of shout it from the mountaintops the best way that I can. And so I'm working on a book. I've submitted a book proposal to a publisher and they're super excited as initial feedback, which is really cool. So hopefully I'll have a book, that we can share with the world soon.
Okay, book, cookbook, combo?
Cookbook, but kind of more, just more than a cookbook. And I think it's going to reach those families that are just ready to really own their family culture, when it comes to food. but more. Like for me, like it's a gateway into also just standing in one's power and being decisive and deliberate about the family that you really want to raise and the kids you want to raise and the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
So every day food is an exercise to kind of track that, and check in with yourself and your relationship with the world around you.
Yeah.
And I'm also working on a film project to do that behind camera, which I'm super excited about.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll make sure that we have everything in the show notes. I know you're active on Instagram and YouTube, and we might have some stuff coming up next year. You have a course and kind of building on that.
Yeah.
Hopefully I might be involved with that too. So I'll make sure if it's out when this airs, and I'll put that in the show notes. If not, then just stay tuned and follow along to hear more in probably 2025.
For sure. I'm looking forward to collaborating.
Well, thank you, Aran, for being here. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Allison. Likewise.
Aran, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I enjoyed our conversation. I always enjoy talking with you about food, nutrition, all of the things. I hope this episode helps to inspire all of you in the way that it inspired me. A quick reminder that if you have not tried Prep Dish, we do have that 2-week free trial set up at prepdish.com/MPM if you want to try it out for 2 weeks and see how it works in your family. That's all I have for this week. I'll be back again next Monday with another episode.